Hey folks, welcome to Demo Day. Jake and Cody here with a special episode. Last week we launched probably what you'd call a micro SaaS. It's a SaaS product targeted at a very specific need that one of our friends had. And today we are going to be adding a new feature to that SaaS. Cody's coming in blind. He's never seen the code base. He doesn't even know what feature we're going to be working on. We figured we just hit roll on the camera and jump right in. Does that sound good to you, Cody? Anything before we jump in?
Yeah, let's see what we're working on here.
So first up, this is FilterForms, and the account that I'm logged in doesn't actually have a form. Quick demo is you can create a form in FilterForms, and this works like how you'd expect any form embedder to work, where you can create a form and then you get a little code that you can drop into a website. The thinking was we can use AI to filter out junk submissions, and here we can describe AI instructions, and this will then use Gemini behind the scenes, essentially to filter. Either the submission will come in, and then it'll send the email all along to the user, aka Kyle, based on the destination that we have configured in destinations here. And if that does not meet the legitimacy threshold, then it'll just be stuck in spam jail, and the submission won't go any further. We could test it. We could do another submit and do something really spammy, like spam at spam. The county is spam. We're also spam at spam email, and I want to sell you something. This is what like 80% of like form spam is these days. And then if we go back to submissions, we'll see that latest spam, and it was actually triaged already and correctly detected as spam.
Cool.
So that's the product. What we still need as functionality is more destinations. Right now, this will just send an email to add a email. And what we want to allow is also sending HTTP requests. So essentially just a post request with this information, and then a user can define that.
Cool. So that's what we're building today? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, let's jump into this feature. I guess just to get the high level view and make sure we're aligned, I guess what I'm picturing is we're probably going to just be extending that existing interface that you have for the email submission, where at least from the UI end, it will be just register a webhook URL that we can hit that probably will have some sort of token embedded in it. I guess we don't really necessarily control that since we're the sender and not the receiver.
Yep.
And then probably just translating the form into some consistent JSON structure. I'm sure that you probably are already representing that with JSON on the back end somehow.
Yeah, this is the schema of the database. We're looking at the Prisma schema file, and we have the form submissions, and we do store the data as a JSON blob. This might not be the most scalable approach in the long run, but we have like a table for representing the forms. And then when the form is submitted, we just store the data with the question it belongs to, and then the data just all as a JSON blob. And it gets formatted into an email nicely when it does go through. But I'm thinking that we just send the whole data, and we can probably have some code snippets populated in the UI for making it easy to integrate with.
Yeah, like just show the, I mean, you could probably even just give a JSON schema, but maybe even just showing some of the JSON blobs from like existing tests is good enough.
That'd be good too. So, and let's see if we can get Claude to do all of this. So I'm going to start with some instructions here. I like to do, when I use Claude, I always go provide instructions, provide files, and then make a request and probably ask Claude to make a plan first. So I'm just going to quick do that. All right. Hey, Claude, we are adding in a new form destination. So I'd like you to do some research on how to implement that. We have an existing form destination. It is only for sending emails when a form is submitted. We want to add in the ability to send it to an HTTP request. We want the user to be able to define a endpoint, and when the form is completed and it's approved, only if it's approved, then we'll send data to that endpoint as well. So can you take a look at our existing database structure, and then we'll need to update the schema types for form destinations and the form destination repository and then eventually endpoint. So kind of look at what CRUD operations we need to add there or adjust, and then look at implementing it in the UI to actually add in that specific destination. So in the UI, we'll need to distinguish between the different form destination types now. We probably want to show those as two separate tables in the UI. So add the UI components in, and then the last thing is when the form submission is received, we'll do the triage, and then if it's approved, we'll need to send it to that. I guess off the screen, I had Super Whisper going. So I normally do Super Whisper. We got some instructions in there. And then I have a little utility tool for selecting files in a repo. One of those CRUD architectures is the right one, and one of it's not. And I forgot to delete the one that's not. And then what did I say? Form destination. So we're going to want form destinations repository, form destinations controller, form destinations routes, and then form destinations schema. And on the UI side, we will probably, we'll want this form destinations page. I think that's everything.
I can't remember, for creating the existing email destination, is there like a dialogue or anything involved there? Or is that just embedded directly in the main page?
Yeah, it's this is a dialogue. The way this UI is set up right now, this sidebar is practically useless. This sidebar shows the different pages for a form. So we have all the destinations for this specific form, and then adding the destination as a dialogue. So yeah, we'll probably have to customize this. But the interesting part in the long form video is we're just going to be sitting here. It's three of us pair programming with Claude, but Claude's the one doing all the work.
Yeah, Claude does 99%, hopefully.
Yeah.
In an ideal world.
We are on a clean branch. That's the other thing I wanted to check. The one thing we can take a look at, so destination types, that's just a comment, I believe. Okay. HTTP URL method header. I mean, probably, I'm going to tell Claude no, don't include the method. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but do you always just run with Claude having edit permissions, or do you kind of review as it goes?
It really depends. Tend to, for the more critical things where I'm opinionated like this, where, the change will happen early and propagate through many other changes, I tend to start a bit more opinionated. And then once I see that it's on the right track, I'll just give it full edit permissions and check in kind of when it's wrapped up.
Yeah, I think I do the same thing. I never default to having no permissions on until I see that it's on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think at this point it will be, because it's got the database schema correct and it's probably good to go. So we'll let that rip. So I just made edits to the Prisma schema. And the one thing I wanted to pull up was, delete this file. This is a piece of documentation that I added for how to make changes to the database. And I've just been referencing this anytime the Claude needs to touch the database, and it's been working great. Like, it updates the Prisma, it updates the shared schema, which for the viewers listening, this is one architecture approach that Cody and I use at First Loop. Is we have a shared repository, a mono repo with shared types across the backend and client. And so here in the shared common, we have some Zod schemas that can be used for validation, and then the actual types inferred off of that as well. And so in that CRUD file, it's saying update the Prisma schema, and then update that, and then it starts updating the CRUD logic, and then the business logic, and then the routes. It's like a little bit verbose to have this many layers, but it's just really nice separation.
And one thing that came to mind here as well too is, I was curious, have you tried injecting this as a skill in Claude Code yet?
I haven't. That would be good.
It feels like that could be a good entry point, and then you don't have to necessarily worry as much about and I think you could even start splitting some of these into different files then, but this isn't like absurdly long as far as documentation goes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about that too much yet. But
400 lines that are pretty sparse.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good call, though. Experimenting with the skills would be fun. I haven't had the chance to do that yet. So let's see here. We have schema updated. updating the form destination repository. Controller doesn't need changes, apparently. We'll see if that's actually accurate or not. Submission controller. So that's the higher level now. Yeah, interesting. All right. Seems pretty reasonable. I don't see anything here that's obviously wrong. We have dependency injection. We have a container that, for the way you have this repo set up, is essentially everything is initialized in this container, and then it's passed into the individual routes.
What is this service class that it's creating? HTTP destination. Oh, I guess that kind of parallels your email service there.
Yeah.
Just
Let's see.
pretty much a simple function that
Oh, yep.
calls the HTTP endpoint. So
Yep.
it seems reasonable enough. I guess if you were getting really fancy, you could, at the risk of enterprising this software, you could make this like an abstract interface that's just like destination service, and it will take the arbitrary payload and a type parameter or something, and it'll map it all out on the back end so that you're not
Yeah.
just, I don't know how many more destinations will be added here, but that was a lot of plumbing just to add a new destination type. But
Yep.
if it's only two, it doesn't really matter. But I can see
Yeah.
that being optimized with some sort of factory pattern.
I could imagine that hypothetically this gets 100 users and it's worth maintaining, worth continuing. Maybe a WordPress destination, and there's a way to integrate with WordPress, maybe Google Sheets and Zapier. And I think at that point, like, you'd probably be pretty well covered.
Yeah, honestly, it feels like email and HTTP endpoint is probably 90%.
Yeah. See, all right. So we got UI changes being made. This is where we probably should have done something a little bit fancier. It is just making a post request to the back end. And this is where we're offline. We were talking about using TRPC. I'll sorry if I'm scrolling too fast.
You're good. This is from the front end code here. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Well, this will be interesting. The file is quite large. It's apparently going to recreate the destinations page altogether.
I hate when it does that.
Yeah, as I said, that feels risky. Oh, you might have to interject on that one, but
That's why you use Git.
Claude cook.
You can always revert it, or at least see what actually changed, which looks pretty substantial.
Now, all right, so we got some.
It's kind of interesting
issues
to see this because it does just go to show splitting components and things into like all of their own files is generally a good thing to do, just from both a general programming perspective, but as well as like clearly Claude can't digest files once they get too large, or can't edit them, I guess. It's kind of funny that it would just default to rewriting it.
Yeah. It's like that's going to be harder. So here we had it built the backend and did a couple iterations on that. So you have this bun filter shared common build. So build the common and then build the backend. It had some issues with Prisma and JSON null, which honestly pops up a bunch if you are not following database design best practices. So adding columns that we expect to be undefined or nullable, again, not a best practice, and know that going into this. So it landed on the correct type, though, which is pretty neat. And then the back end built successfully. And then struggling to edit the destinations page. So we'll see where it ends up with that. All right. HTTP, share repository routes. Cool. So I think the one thing it probably didn't do is, and before we do that, so I have a Docker Compose that'll pop up the database. And one thing we can do, given that we're using Prisma, is we can use Bunx Prisma Studio, and it will open up just a data inspector here. It has some UI quirks. It's definitely not as clean as something like Supabase, but works just fine. Let's see, that's interesting. I wonder if there is an error existing because the migration has not been run. So I'm going to ask if Claude has run the migration. In this project specifically, definitely not in all projects that we work on. I've given Claude permission to run the DB migration, and it uses just a couple of Prisma commands. And
this is just local migrations, right?
Correct, yeah. All right, so that works. I ran the migration. Let's see if this will, now this loads properly. Cool. So that should be working. Let's take a look. Let's go to localhost here. I don't know if you have run into this a bunch, but if you build the Next.js app while it's running, it'll get these funky errors.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that.
Dashboard. All right. We got two separate destination tables. There we go. Now we got a form. All right. So we have the form. We have our test server running here, and it should be able to receive it. So let's close that, close that. Destinations. We've added this new webhook. I'm going to delete the email address one. We don't need to test that right now. You today. We have that submitted. We should see in our submissions here, we can ignore, this is something we need to fix, but we can see this most recent submission came in, how are you today, at 3:40. So if we open that up, it looks like we did indeed receive that.
Cool.
Nice. So we're 30 minutes into the recording, and we added a new feature with a lot of talking over it.
Yeah, that was pretty smooth. So I could see, honestly, this is probably good enough to just check in at this point. I
Yeah.
could see maybe wanting to add some just extra UI enhancements. Maybe you'd want to verify webhook calls. Like maybe you require that the webhook responds with a certain message or status code just to verify that it is actually connected and receiving values,
Yeah.
or like any sort of error reporting. I could see if maybe you want to embed a token in a header just to prevent spam at the API layer as well, and just have some sort of authentication so that just arbitrary people can't hit that API on whatever your web server is.
Yep.
Having some reporting if you get like a 401 or what have you on that end. But this feels definitely good enough for now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's workable. And then add all of that over time, and then I would probably also want to make it happen outside of the main loop and add retries for if the webhook endpoint doesn't respond with a 200 response. So that way it'll try 3 times or something over the course of a day.
Yep. Yeah. Do you have anything like that for the email flow already? Feels like ingest just as like a self-hosted flavor could potentially be a nice retry mechanism there, just to do some really aggressive like exponential back off before giving up after like 48 hours.
Yeah, not yet. Definitely will reach for ingest first. I think that will cover all the needs, and the self-hosted version should be more than sufficient. Let's check one more thing. Let's see if Claude, embed code, destinations. I was just seeing if Claude could add, oh, that looks ugly. We're going to ship it though, because we're running out of time. But we got some examples here about how to at least pull the code in. I don't think anyone's going to look at this, but it's at least a starting point. The last thing I want to call out for how we work here is I'll create this pull request, and something that has allowed all of this work to happen so fast is just having really good checks built in. So Claude ran the build backend and build client every time before it said it was done with the feature, and we saw a couple times I was able to do multiple iterations based on that feedback. And then the final check before it gets merged into main is running those checks again here as GitHub Actions. And then once that's ready, we'll be able to hit merge, and it'll go live in just a couple minutes on Railway with the CI/CD for that just built in. All right, I think that's a wrap on the feature. I mean, we're not going to sit here and wait for CI/CD checks to pass on the episode here, but we got one to pass. Anything else, or are we good to wrap up, you think?
So I guess parting comment, this is why I love Bun, that you can get a build in 30 seconds, including like actually spinning up the GitHub action container and everything. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
Very few other platforms will do it that quickly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for walking us through this. This was fun. I guess we'll see what kind of feedback we get, but I could definitely see this being a fun format going forward.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, definitely check out our YouTube channel where we post this content and more, and follow us on Twitter as well. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.